While researching for my EV-based videos, I naturally look at what's happening in the ICE car markets around the world, and over the last few months I've seen a fair degree of panic setting in. Dave Takes It On looks at why some are panicking and what it means for the future of EVs. Well, headlines mean very little. They're usually just designed to cherry pick some key highlights designed to keep you reading or viewing. But in a fast-changing world, most of us never quite get round to reading much further. We'll take new ICE car sales. For the likes of Ford and Stellantis and General Motors post record numbers and record profits for Q3 2023, claiming all is well. But they have investors and shareholders to satisfy and answer to. It's simply not possible for them to tell the whole truth, just claim that they're in deep trouble and it's getting worse if it actually was. Confidence is everything. So we get sanitised, feel-good interpretations of the results. Not lies as such, just a different emphasis. But others, in some of the YouTube channels I watch, who actually go out and see for themselves what's happening, they're reporting a very different picture. Well, Brandon, who runs Car Questions Answered, and Car Edge, a father and son channel, where the father has spent decades as a car dealer, both paint a very different, actually gloomy, dismal picture. Brandon sells used cars in the States and deals in lower priced, older used cars that he sources mainly from the auctions. Those cars in the auctions traditionally come from new car dealers who take back older cars that they just don't want on their forecourts. He follows prices closely and he's obviously up to date on what is selling and for how much. That is his job after all. Well, his on-site reports show a huge increase in the number of finance repossessions passing through the auctions, most of which are not selling for anywhere near the reserve price. Well, he also visits new car dealers to see what cars they're taking back in part exchange, as these will eventually trickle down to him. A healthy level in new cars being sold means a healthy supply of trade-ins for him and other dealers. But he's reporting huge numbers of new cars in stock in the dealers, row after row, unsold. Not only are the premises totally full of new unsold cars, but they often have overflow areas which are also now full. Just no room for any more. And Car Edge, another channel, paints a very similar picture. Inventories climbing rapidly and the number of days it would take to sell that stock is rocketing. And that is really strange. Having been hammered by the COVID pandemic for almost 3 years, during which many factories suffered significant lockdowns, followed quickly by a massive supply line shortage as their suppliers around the world also locked down, then more recently with the UAW strikes over the last few months, the likes of Ford, General Motors and Stellantis should be seeing a massive pent-up demand for new cars, with customers queuing up trying to get hold of the new cars. If sales are still good, then dealers should be running low and begging for more stock from the manufacturers to meet this pent-up customer demand. But these videos, and many others, show exactly the opposite. Massive inventories of unsold vehicles, and they're being matched now by price cuts. Now, for years, dealers have gorged on buoyant sales with more buyers than vehicles available, allowing them to add markups, or as they call it in the States, market adjustments. For many years prior to COVID, it was not possible to buy a new car at list price. Today, the market adjustments seem to have totally disappeared, with most dealers now offering buyers list prices, and some are discounting with reports of up to 20% off list price. Well, we in the UK didn't suffer the same way from these market adjustments. We seem to be a bit more refined. But here and in Europe for many years, dealers simply refused to discount the new cars, and they offered increasingly less and less for our trade-ins. They had more buyers than stock, and the cars got dearer and dearer. And car buying companies sprang up to try to capitalise on this. Companies like We Buy Any Car. They offered much better prices than the dealers could. And as the price difference between what our old car was worth and what the new car would cost widened, dramatically, and the interest rates began to rise at an alarming rate. So here and around the world, people began to hang on to their cars for longer. Maybe years ago, people upgraded every 2 or 3 years. Now the average finance period is 3 to 4 years, and 5 and 6 year finance packages are being advertised. We now hold on to our cars much longer. The average in the UK, according to the RAC, is now nearly 8 years, and this is a massive blow to new car sales. First, most of their buyers now swap the cars up to half as often as they used to. But many are also choosing not to swap at all. After years of cheap finance, that comes to an end, and now a looming recession predicted for the future, and the massively expensive repayments being offered at ridiculous interest rates means that many are just glad to have reached the end of their finance or lease agreements and just settle for keeping their cars, payment free, for a few years longer. The demand is simply not there. It has dried up. All the indications show there should be an overwhelming pent-up demand. It has just not yet arrived. And the really scary thought is starting to be talked about: what if it never returns? What if this is it? Well, legacy automakers have built up huge debts over the last half century. That debt is really not a problem, provided they can make the payments. And those payments rely on increasing sales and increasing margins, and they are both missing today. Not only are they not selling as many cars as, say, 10 years ago, but they're being sold at hugely reduced prices, list price at best, discounted at worst, and still the sales are not returning. Now, a slump in sales is not a problem if your finances are solid, but auto legacy finances are not solid. Not only are the debts at record levels, but all of them have been forced to finance their entry into the EV world of the future, and all without exception have failed dismally. They've lost simply staggering sums of money, and all without exception have recently announced an abandonment of their lavish EV plans, revealed only a few months before, and all are concentrating on a return to what's worked so well for them in the past: ICE car sales and hybrids. Denial is the name of the game. The market they are just returning to actually no longer exists. And this has nothing to do with EVs. The huge drop in demand can in no way be taken up by EVs, nor has it. There are not enough being manufactured anywhere in the world to replace what the ICE legacy industry has just lost. And EV buyers themselves also are putting off buying new, or at least putting it off for longer. For many people, buying an expensive EV is no longer on the cards, not yet. But EV sales are still increasing, in fact massively so. World, European, US and Chinese markets still show a growth rate hovering around 50% year over year. So where are the sales coming from? Well, I look at this in a future video I've got planned. I look in more detail, but basically EV sales are switching big time to commercial. Many people just no longer buy their cars, they choose to lease instead. And one feature of the EV car is that the residual value is much higher than an equivalent petrol or hybrid car. And this makes leasing an EV cheaper than financing an EV. And in many cases, it makes leasing an EV cheaper than buying or leasing an equivalent ICE car. There's a huge boom in EV private leasing, but also another market, company cars. EVs are particularly favoured by the government in forms of incentives, subsidies and tax breaks, and companies are increasingly offering their employees salary sacrifice leasing deals. Well, this obviously means a drop in new EV sales to private buyers. If your company offers you an affordable brand new EV as part of your salary package, you're not going to go and buy a new car of your own as well. Well, the market for new ICE cars, petrol, diesel or hybrid, has simply gone. And the rate of collapse will just keep accelerating if more and more companies carry on switching to offering their employees new EVs, salary sacrifice at very attractive rates. And that is actually happening. There are huge advantages for both employees and employers. The legacy auto industry as we know it has been and gone. Its total collapse is now inevitable, and the pace of that collapse is accelerating. It's really scary. and all they can do is shout about we're too big to fail, bring on the subsidies. Well, surely even they now know that any subsidies cannot even get close to paying off the massive debts. And with declining sales and declining profits, those debts will just continue to increase. Now, some will probably quickly complete the transition to EVs and finally begin selling cars once again in sensible numbers. But with each passing month, the task becomes that much harder. Well, regular viewers know I love my analogies, and one my dentist once told me is especially apt. He said, if you come and see me quickly when you've got a problem, I can usually sort it out quickly and easily and cheaply, saving the tooth. But if you wait too long, the tooth will become unrepairable, just have to be removed. Well, the window of time for repairing the legacy automakers is closing rapidly. How many just do not see what the reality is? We may not have that much longer to wait to find out. Well, thanks for watching. I'm Dave.